Hello, this is Miss Andrea with Not Another Homeschool Vlog. And this time we're talking about a sister who reported her sister for homeschooling and wants to know if she was right or if she was wrong. So she says, my sister's kids, age 7 and 15, didn't do well under virtual school last year. So she pulled them out towards the end of the year to do homeschooling with a tutor based off online curriculums. And so I'm assuming she's talking about COVID schooling. She thought homeschooling was actually working better for the kids academically because of the one on one attention and personalized pace. She did not register her homeschooling program through the state because she said the curriculum mandates were too similar to the public schools and there was too much emphasis on standardized testing. They also move every few years for her husband's work, so she felt that made it unfeasible. The kids were previously at a private school, so the government is unaware that they're no longer attending traditional school. I begin to grow worried because they're only working with a tutor 3 to 4 hours a day. The rest of the time, they're doing whatever they please. They aren't guided by a standardized curriculum of math, English, science, and reading. They can study whatever topics they want to. I felt really uncomfortable with there being no official oversight to the program, making sure they were learning on pace. This is so unusual and just not how things are done. So I expressed these concerns to my sister multiple times and encouraged her to register through any number of government programs or to return her children to traditional school so as to not make them be so abnormal. She said she appreciated the insight, but they were happy with how things were. I called the reporting agency out of concern for my niece and nephew, figuring that if they were learning on pace, then all would be well. And if they weren't, then intervention was necessary. They required my sister to register through the state, but that's all. I did end up telling her it was me so she wouldn't find out some other way. And she is very upset. I feel badly about what I did, but I would have felt badly either way. So let's talk about it. Okay, this is wild. I side with the homeschool mom mostly. The sister was wrong on every count, but there were some things that the homeschool mom was doing wrong. In just about every state in the United States, if you are homeschooling your kids, you have to report it to your state or county homeschool office. Because if you don't, you are going to run into some serious problems down the line. Number one, someone could call on you for educational neglect. And if you don't have the paperwork done and you're found to not being homeschooling properly, you have an issue there. Two, if your spouse at some point decides they disagree with your homeschooling and you haven't reported, then you've got a custody issue. Loss count. Also, when it's time for your child to get working papers or a driver's license, most states mandate that your child be in school. And so you need to have that same agency. So you need to have that same agency that you've been reporting to approve your working papers or send the letter to the DMV so your child can get their driver's license. So if you're not reporting properly, you're keeping your child from getting a driver's license or working papers. Finally, colleges A lot of colleges won't accept your child as a homeschooled student. They won't consider your student for admissions if there isn't a record of them legally schooling, being a legal homeschooler. And so it's not a lot to ask. You just have to, in my state, you just send a yearly letter saying we're homeschooling this year from this time to this time. In other states that are way more stringent, like New York, you send a yearly letter and then you send your plan, and then they approve of your plan or reject your plan, and then you have to resubmit your plan. And at the end of the year, you have to show that you've done your plan. So it's a lot. However, so that covers my concerns for the homeschooling parent, right? But the sister who reported her was completely out of line for so many reasons. First of all, parents have a right to homeschool, and no one, sister, mother, father, God, has any right to push back at them at all. The biggest problem is that she did not register her. She did not register her homeschooling program with the state, right? But beyond that, the fact that she was using a tutor for 3 to 4 hours a day is amazing. Amazing. Homeschool law, the law in most states is that you homeschool your kids 180 days a year for, I think, 3.5 or 4, something like that, hours. It varies. So she was doing everything according to the law. And on top of that, she hired a tutor. You don't have to hire a tutor to homeschool your kids. You can teach them yourselves. So this sister-in-law that got reported was actually going above and beyond what is required. Think about this. Think about professional actors, children who are professional actors. Even like kids who are on American Idol, if you've ever watched in the old days, there were some older teenagers on American Idol, and they would complain that they had to not only learn their songs and do all these appointments, hair, makeup, whatever, but they also had to spend 3 hours a day with a tutor. It's kind of the law. So these kids were getting top quality homeschooling because what takes 6 hours to do in a public school only takes 3 hours to do at home, because you're not doing that whole hurry up and wait for the other students. So, I mean, it doesn't matter if sister felt uncomfortable, especially when she said she felt uncomfortable because it was going to make the kids weird. Like, that is such an old, tired trope. It is patently false that homeschooling makes you abnormal. Look, a lot of homeschoolers are weird. They start out that way. We homeschool because we're weird. We're not weird because we homeschool. We homeschool because we tend to follow our own path and stick out. It is not the other way around. It's not the other way around. Who wants to be normal anyway? So I'd love to hear what you think. Am I being nitpicky? Did the sister have any right at all to call? I don't think she had a right to call, but I do think that the homeschooling parent missed an important step. And when her sister told her she missed that important step, she should have taken that important step. But to call the authorities on your sister for homeschooling, and I've had the authorities called on me. There was a time period where a new neighbor moved in, and for a while there kept being like my county truants officer sitting on my block, and this went on for like weeks. And one day he rang the bell, and he was like he watched us come and go. He watched me get them in the car, pull off, and I was always like, what the hey is this about? And so one day he rang the bell, And I opened the door and he was like, "Hi, I'm the truant officer." And I looked at my kids and I was like, "Go in the living room." And then I asked him what he needed. And he's like, "There's a report of educational neglect." And I was like, "Oh, really?" He was like, "So do you have your homeschool papers?" And I was like, "Here's my intent to homeschool." And at that time, no longer required. You had to do a monthly attendance, which is ridiculous. But I had attendance for the previous month. I didn't have attendance for the last month. And I showed him all that. He's like, "Keep your attendance records up to date because you have a crazy neighbor." And then he turned around and walked away. Um, but had I not had those papers, there could have been a problem. And maybe they would have just said, "You have to file by a certain date." Who knows? But cover your butts when you homeschool, because the person you least expect to report you is going to report you. And that's just sad and unnecessary. So that's all I have for today. Till next time.